So I want to share with you an understanding which I think gives a lot of insight. And I think it gives a lot of insight in general into life, this Mishnah, as we have to recall and we have to understand. Every Mishnah that we read here is transformational. These are life-changing teachings. So if you would just read this Mishnah superficially, you'd be thinking to yourself, well, all right, well, what's the essential message that I'm getting out of this Mishnah? It's to, take my studies diligently and seriously and make sure that I remember everything. But if we walk away from that teaching, have we actually been changed as people? What has actually happened to us in terms of our essential mentality, essential engagement with life? Nothing really has changed apart from being told to take our studies seriously and not forgetting what we've learned. Does anyone want to suggest a deeper message from this Mishnah? What we could learn from here?
May I ask one question? Sorry, I'm a bit out of it. Which Mishnah are we looking at?
Mishnah 10 on page 560. Mishnah 10 in chapter 3.
Cool, got it.
Okay. So now let me give you an understanding which I think is transformational and very, very important. And I think again, all of these Mishnayos are so appropriate in the specific times that we find ourselves in. So it should be a blessing, and it should hopefully give us some solace in our experience of life. Let's have a look. So I once said to an individual when I was on my journey in becoming more engaged and more involved in Judaism, I said to one of my mentors, I said, sometimes I'm in a situation where I can't remember if I've said a blessing over food or not. I can't remember, did I make an after bracha or did I make a previous bracha? I find that I'm experiencing that a lot, okay? So, I said to them, they should maybe invent something, some type of, way to remember if you've said it, like a watch that you can tap if you've already made the bracha, or tap twice if you've made the after bracha, and then you can just check. So what he said to me, which was very, very, very important. What do you think? What do you think the answer should be?
That you need to be absolutely conscious in the moment, because if you're in the moment, you're saying it not because you're saying it rote. You're saying it because you mean it, because it's important for that moment for you.
Excellent, Jenny. Excellent.
Excellent.
That's the exact answer. And that's what this person said to me. They said, well, are you just saying the bracha because it's just the thing you need to do? Or are you actually present when you're saying it? And you're actually engaging with it properly, not just from a standpoint of, I have to say this blessing, but you're actually really conscious and really present and really engaging with what you're saying. If you say it that way, there's no chance you're going to forget it. There's no chance you're going to say, oh, did I say it? Yes or no? You're going to remember, yes, this was a transformational experience. How can I forget it? And what Rabbi Dostai Bar Yonai is saying here is that what the study of Torah is teaching us is to be fundamentally present in our lives. And if you were to come along and forget one element of your studies, it means you were not present in that experience. It means that you weren't an individual that was present in life. If you were totally subsumed and not sort of taken away by the tide of thoughts and by all these different experiences around, but you were totally present, you won't forget what's happening. The Rambam says that when a person studies, they should actually enunciate what they're saying, because it will then be an emotional experience. It will come into their heart and they won't forget. And so what I think this is teaching us on a deeper level is that all of our experiences in life, to a certain extent that this experience that the whole world community is going through is saying, well, there is so much that we're engaging with life in terms of our work, in terms of our prowess or engagement with the world externally, but how much are we actually present in our own experience of life? How much are we actually there and experiencing life in a real way, that we actually recall it, that it's not just something that we speed past and not actually recall. So Torah, or the study of Torah, is there to train us to be totally present. Because when you're sitting down and engaging with the teaching and going deeper into it and deeper into it and deeper into it and understanding that there's spiritual nutrition beyond and beneath the surface, that's training us to be an individual or individuals that experience life deeply, that we remember life, that we don't just forget it. So now, does that make sense, everyone?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the second part is a little bit of an interesting one, because it says, now understand that this concept is only when it's not difficult. It's only when you have the ability to focus in properly and you're not actually being bombarded by difficulty. So now what it's teaching us is the following. Sometimes in our lives, we have experiences with life where there is difficulty, God forbid, which means you're in a situation where you are being, God forbid, bombarded by something which really creates an experience which makes it harder for you to be present. It can be an emotional experience. It could be something that a person is worried about, or something that a person has just experienced. Now, what a person often does to themselves is they say, well, why can't I be present? They get frustrated with themselves. Why can't I actually experience life? Why am I being so taken by my thoughts and my emotions? And what the Mishnah is teaching us here is understand that we are human, and that sometimes we are in situations where we struggle with being present. We struggle with actually experiencing life. What should you do in that circumstance? What do you think you should do?
Trevor, isn't that why it's so harsh? Because we are all human. So, I mean, I worked at an old age home for 7 years. They gave 2 shirim a day there. And I mean, we know the nature of the average resident in the old age home. Surely some of them didn't remember the whole shir. I mean, I'm already battling with this concept.
Well, that's what we're teaching here. It's more it's a deeper message. Just the
like Jenny said, but we're humans. We forget stuff.
Again, so let's take it to the underlying message. What is really the deeper message here? Is it that you're forgetting your learning, or is it that the way that you're engaging with your learning is not deep enough, and thus the way that you're engaging with life itself is not deep enough? That's the deeper message here. So if, for happenstance, you were trying to actually be present, you actually had the opportunity, there was really actually nothing to sort of, and there generally isn't, the constant thinking and the constant distraction that we engage with really eventuates in nothing. So all we ever have is the present moment. And thus there's only ever a responsibility or a opportunity to be totally vested in what's happening now, right now. And that's what it's teaching us, Philip. So now, if you reshifted or re-engaged with life differently, now there's a circumstance where you're not going to forget. You're going to be totally involved, and thus you're going to remember the learning. So those individuals at the old age home, again, are they going to remember the Mishnah? Are you going to remember the Mishnah? I'm not sure. But one thing that we need to take out from this Mishnah is, how do we engage with life? We have to ask ourselves that question. Are we fully present in the engagement? Are we fully there in our learning? But now learning, we have to understand, is extrapolated to all experiences. When you're having your coffee in the morning, Well, are you on your phone and you're also thinking about that and you're also looking at this? Or are you totally invested in the experience, totally present in understanding that there's a deeper reality in all of our experiences of life? And that's...
Can I make...
Yeah, Jenny?
Can I say... I have burnt food on the oven, on the stove, a few times this year, maybe 3 times. The thing is that I haven't been present because I've got too much on the go, or I'm trying to do something else while I'm doing something else. And I think that maybe it's telling us to simplify, to be more in the moment with our entire lives. It's not just about learning. It's not just about doing Pirkei Avot or doing your prayers, or it's about every moment. It's talking about every moment.
100%, Jenny, 100%. That's exactly what it's saying, and that's why when we reread the Mishnah, anyone who forgets one thing from their learning, i.e., if you're in the gear or the mode of going so fast in life that you're not going to remember anything, then it's as if you are obligated for your own soul, which means you're not living life, buddy. That's what it's teaching you. You're the one that's obligated for your own soul. Here I've given you life and you're not actually living it. That's what it means you're mischai b'nafsha, you're obligated for your life, because you're the one that has squandered the experience of life. Yeah? So I think that's the teaching here of this Mishnah.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Philip has a question.
Yes, Philip.
I wrote it up there. I fully accept what you and Jenny have said and what we meant to take out of the Mishnah. But what I'm struggling with is the consequence of those mortal human beings who aren't able to. That I'm struggling with Rabbi Dostai's consequence that he's suggesting.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Philip. It's not a tat. It's not a tat in the sense that God looks at us and says, all right, Philip, we're going to give you a test at the end of the day or at the end of the week. Let's see how much of the Torah that you learned that week you remember. You get a certain mark, which is below. If you don't get 100%,
I think if I can just say something, yeah, I don't think it's about necessarily, Philip, about forgetting, but I think it's like the rabbi said earlier. It's a question of, do we walk away from changed, or do we walk away? Okay, so it was another cool shiur, and thank you, and tomorrow we join in again. I think it's more about that.
Okay, all right. So I fully understand what we meant to take out of the Mishnah. I'm struggling with the consequence, and I do understand the deeper level you've explained.
The consequence is forgetting. The consequence is forgetting, and if you forget, you won't do that thing. You won't be as focused. You won't. That's the consequence. You're not going to get punished. That's punishment in itself.
No, the consequence is not forgetting. The action is forgetting. The consequence is bearing guilt for your soul. The forgetting is not the consequence.
Let's understand.
Forgetting is the action.
Forgetting is a consequence.
So the analogy is the following. When I was in yeshiva, we would often go on trips, for Shabbos experiences for Shabboses. And I've just muted you for a sec because there's a bit of noise in between. I'll unmute in a sec. One of the experiences was we went to Shimla, which is where the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan, stood. And I remember one Shabbos afternoon, we had the opportunity to go for a hike on Shabbos, beautiful hike, to actually the place where the actual Mishkan, the actual tabernacle stood. And they have the archaeological evidence, the exact sizes, the caves around, everything was preserved and perfect there. And I remember I had a choice. Do I go or do I have my Shabbos shluf? Now, which one do you think I chose? So, I chose, unfortunately, the Shabbos shluf. And I still berate myself for actually squandering that experience and never actually going to experience, and be and see where the actual Mishkan, the tabernacle of this world, stood. Can you imagine how crazy I was that I didn't go? My Shabbos shluf, it was more important to me. So what's the consequence of me not going? The consequence of me not going is I lost out on that experience. I'm mischayv b'nafshay, I'm obligated for not seeing that tabernacle. I am now, that's my consequence. So what's the consequence here, Philip? It's not that Hashem says, oh, you forgot your learning, now we're going to punish you. No, you are punishing yourself by not being present in your experience of the learning. That's what it's teaching us. Understand? Yeah. All right, so what I want to just conclude with is a short understanding here from Rabbi Nachman. And I'll read it to you. You don't have it in your Mishnayos there, but he actually says something really, really unique. He says that this whole concept of remembering our learning, it's almost like there's a focal point on remembering our learning to the exclusion of everything else. What does that mean? And I think it's tied into what we were speaking about. So I'll read to you what he says. There are times where forgetfulness can be a positive thing. As Rabbi Nachman teaches, most people think of forgetting as a defect, but I consider it a great benefit. If you did not forget, it would be utterly impossible to serve God. So what does he say? He says, this is very important. I'll read to you the paragraph here. The Rebbe explains that if you could remember your entire past, these memories would pull you down and not allow you to raise yourself towards God. Whatever you did would constantly afflict you. But God has given you the power to forget and disregard the past. It's gone forever and need not be brought to mind because you can forget. You are no longer disturbed by the past. So he writes, it's very important to consider when serving God. Now, what we have to reinterpret the concept of serving God is living life. That is what serving God is all about. It's living life, because essentially life and God are the same thing. So now, if we aren't able to push aside all of our thoughts and all of our worries about the past and lamenting, he's going to say here. So most people are distressed by past events, especially during prayer. When they recite their prayers, their thoughts are often disturbed by memories of the past. They may think about their business or household affairs, worrying whether they did something wrong or neglected something important, while attempting to serve God through their prayer or study. They may become troubled by their many sins and shortcomings. Now, many people think God wants you to feel guilty. God wants you to remember all the sins and all the mistakes. No. God wants you to forget. God wants you to be totally present in life and stop thinking so much. Stop thinking about all of the past and all of the mistakes and all of the things that may have gone wrong and did go wrong, and what if I would have done this or would have done that? God wants you to be totally present in the experience of life, that you don't forget anything because you're loving the experience so much. When you love the experience, you won't forget it. And he thus concludes this is a universal problem. The best advice is simply to forget. What does forgetting mean? It means stop thinking about the past. If you've done something wrong or made a mistake, okay, move forward and see what I can do now to be totally present. Most mistakes come from a lack of presence. But what do? We subsume our thinking with the past and, oh my gosh, this happened and that happened and I can't believe I did this and what that person did to me and what this is. And thus we cloud our experience of life. Now, who's the one that's being, what's the consequence here? The consequence is our own experience of life. That's what the consequence is. Not like Hashem's looking down and saying, all right, I'm gonna punish you for this. No, you are punishing yourself. That's what life is all about. That's what spirituality is about. That's how we're engaging with God. So this is, I think, the understanding of this Mishnah. A very, very deep and beautiful Mishnah. And just this, even the experience itself shows us how we could look at any circumstance and see a superficial understanding or a deeper understanding. When we first engage with this Mishnah, I mean, most of us, including myself, were thinking this is quite an impervious teaching. Doesn't really, I don't feel much relevance apart from, feeling the fear of forgetting my learning. It's like when I was studying economics at school, they told us the Chinese would have certain like a noose they would put around their necks, and that they would sit there at their table studying. That if they would fall asleep, they would get woken up so they could focus on their studying. It sounds like this mission is saying that. Put a noose around your head, around your neck. If you don't remember your learning, well, you'll know what the consequence is. No, that doesn't really motivate me, and it doesn't really motivate anyone. Maybe if you're brought up in that way, but it doesn't really give a motivating reality. But what really motivates me is that if I understand when I fully bring myself into the experience of learning, fully, and I do what Rabbi Nachman teaches me, I forget all of the things around me that are disturbing me, and I'm disturbing essentially myself. And through the experience, I'm going to meditate itself. The learning itself is a meditation. It's a training of the mind to be present. I've just tapped into life. I've just tapped into existence. And thus, when I don't do such a thing, I'm mischayev b'nafshay. I've just now obligated myself, so to speak. I've got guilt on my soul, which means I'm not now going to experience life. I've lost out on the experience or the opportunity of living. All right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what's going to happen in about 5 minutes is the Zoom meeting is going to cancel because we have the free mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to do just one halacha now of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which it says that actually if you can learn 2 halachas a day, it is a person becomes a person of the world to come. Just 2 halachas a day. And again, why 2 halachas a day? Because it brings us totally in the experience of life. So I'm going to share with you one halacha. If we run out of time, I'm going to just re-sign onto the meeting and you can join us for that. But I understand that those have joined us for half an hour for the Pirkei Avos. Lovely to have you with us. It's been a beautiful experience to be able to learn with you, to see your faces. So I'm going to share with you now one halacha. Anyone have any questions before we continue with the halacha?
Just to say thank you very much. I think that I have changed. I really think so.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Jenny. I think that these concepts need constant meditation and remembering. We are given the opportunity to meditate 3 times a day through prayer, and Hashem wants us to engage with the study of Torah constantly. But again, we need to remember what the point of it all is. The point is for you. The point is for us to be alive, to experience life in a real way. That's the point. That's the reward. To really be tapped into Hashem.